Namaste and greetings. I, Tripta Behra, researcher at IMPRI, Impact and Policy Research Institute, Prabhav एवं नीति अनुसंधान संस्थान, नई दिल्ली, extend my warmest welcome to you all to IMPRI Web Policy Talk. We are gathered today for a panel discussion on cities, local governance, and the Union Budget 2025-26 as part of IMPRI's 6th annual series of thematic deliberations and analysis of the Union Budget 2025-26. This discussion is organized by the Center for Habitat, Urban and Regional Studies, CHURS, IMPRI, New Delhi, as part of IMPRI Web Policy Talk series. I welcome all of you to this enlightening deliberation and thank you for tuning into this discussion. Now let me introduce the esteemed gathering present here today. Our chair for the session is Dr. Rumi Aijaz, Senior Fellow and Head, Urban Policy Research Initiative, Observer Research Foundation, ORF, New Delhi. We welcome you, sir. The distinguished panelists for the session are Professor Chetan Vaidya, Visiting Distinguished Professor IMPRI, Independent Urban Advisor, former Director, School of Planning and Architecture, SPA, New Delhi, and National Institute of Urban Affairs, NIUA, New Delhi. Independent Director, Gift City, Gandhinagar. We also have with us Dr. Shaumideep Chattopadhyay, Associate Professor, Economics, Vishwa Bharati Shanti Niketan, and also Visiting Senior Fellow, IMPRI. We also have with us Professor Vishwanath Alok, Professor of Public Finance, Indian Institute of Public Administration, IIPA, New Delhi. And we have Professor Mahalaya Chatterjee, Professor, Center for Urban Economic Studies, Department of Economics, University of Calcutta, also visiting Professor IMPRI. We have with us Professor Tathagat Chatterjee, Professor of Urban Management and Governance, Xavier University, Bhubaneswar. We have with us Mr. Sameer Unhale, Visiting Senior Fellow IMPRI, Urban Expert. And last but not the least, we have with us Mr. Tikendra Singh Panwar, former Deputy Mayor, Shimla, Senior Fellow IMPRI. We welcome you all to today's discussion. We look forward to learning from our esteemed gathering. Now, without further ado, let us start the program. To begin, we have a brief presentation by Ms. Ria. Over to you, Ria.
Good evening, everyone. So today I am here to discuss the Union Budget 2025 and its transformative impact on India's urban sector and governance. With almost 40% of India's population expected to live in urban areas by 2030, cities are set to be center stage of India's economic future. The budget addresses several challenges ranging from affordable housing and mobility to sustainable water management, while encouraging innovation and public-private partnerships. One of the boldest announcements in this year's budget is the creation of Urban Challenge Fund, which aims to turn our cities into self-sustaining growth hubs. The Urban Challenge Fund stands out as a key policy measure to drive urban transformation. The government has allocated a significant 1 lakh crore to this initiative. It promotes bankable projects in sectors like urban development, sanitation, and smart water management. What makes this fund innovative is its financing model, which emphasizes public-private partnerships. The government will contribute 25% of the project cost, while 50% will come from private sector and municipal bonds. The fund encourages cities to raise resources locally, which enhances their fiscal autonomy while making them accountable for delivering quality services. The pilot phase begins in fiscal year 26 with rupees 10,000 crores set aside to kickstart projects in cities like Surat, Vizag, and Varanasi, which are already known for their innovative urban initiatives. This approach could be a turning point in how Indian cities finance and execute the infrastructure projects. Then now let's talk about the Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs, which received a 52% increase in budget allocation this year, a clear reflection of the government's commitment to urban renewal. The total allocation for the ministry stands at 96,777 crore rupees. Some of the key components include Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana Urban. 19,794 crores has been allocated to this scheme, continuing the government's mission of housing for all. This initiative has already provided millions of affordable homes to urban poor families, and the new allocation will accelerate its progress further. Metro rail projects. The budget for metro rail projects has been raised to 31,106 crore, a 47% increase from last year. This funding will be used to expand metro networks in key metropolitan regions, aiming to reduce congestion and improve mobility. Swachh Bharat Mission. 5,000 crore has been earmarked for strengthening sanitation infrastructure and waste management systems in urban areas. This allocation reflects the ongoing focus on creating clean and healthy cities. The Atal Mission for Rejuvenation and Urban Transformation, AMRUT, has also received a 25% increase in its budget, with a total allocation of 10,000 crore rupees. The scheme is primarily focused on improving basic urban amenities like water supply, sewage, and green spaces. This expanded funding will help align AMRUT with the new age challenges like climate resilience and smart water management. On the other hand, the Smart Cities mission, which has been a major focus in recent years, has not received any fresh allocation. This shift indicates a change in priorities from building smart cities in isolation to integrating smart solutions across all cities under initiatives like the Urban Challenge Fund. Another significant announcement is the expansion of the UDAN scheme aimed at improving regional air connectivity. 120 new destinations have been announced, bringing air travel to smaller towns and cities. This expansion is expected to serve 40 million passengers annually in the next decade. A special focus has been given to the Patna Bihar Bita Airport expansion project in Bihar, which will significantly improve connectivity in the region. Such projects not only reduce travel time but also boost tourism and regional economies. By focus on regional airports, the government ensures that the benefit of growth reach Tier 2 and Tier 3 cities, promoting more balanced regional development. The 2025 budget is also a moment to reflect on the progress made since previous budget announcement. Initiatives like cities as growth hubs launched in 2024 are now showing tangible results in cities like Surat and Vizag, where public-private partnerships have led to impressive urban transformations. In conclusion, the Union Budget 2025 reflects the government's recognition of the growing importance of cities in India shaping India's future. It is a well-balanced mix of visionary policy and practical solutions, focusing on sustainability, fiscal responsibility, and inclusiveness. It is now up to the local governments, private investors, and citizens to collaborate and turn these visions into reality. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much, Riya, for that presentation and for giving us a brief overview of this year's budget. Proceeding further, it is my honor and privilege to invite Chair Dr. Rumi Aijaz to start the program with the Chair's opening remarks. Over to you, sir.
Thank you. Am I audible? Are you able to hear?
Yes, sir, you're audible.
Okay, so I would like to begin by greeting all the eminent speakers in this program and the participants. And I join IMPRI in welcoming the distinguished panel of experts. I would like to say that the presentation made by the young scholars at IMPRI was extremely good. It not only provided the information that has been provided in the budget documents, but the additions that have been made have enriched the discussion. So that was a very impressive and good coverage of the proposals presented in the budget by the Government of India. I would be briefly repeating some of the statements that have been made in the presentation. This is based on my own observations by reviewing the the budget that was presented on the 1st of February. So I observed that a total of about 1 lakh crore rupees or 1,000 billion is allocated for urban development. It looks like a very big amount. I do not know the basis for arriving at this amount, although there have been studies conducted in the past about the investment requirements in Indian cities and various urban areas. But I'm sure that with this amount, a lot of work could be done if the amount is utilized on time and effectively. Then, when compared with the budget of the previous year, and this I'm referring to the budget related information, not the revised one, but the budgeted one. And according to this, a growth of 17% is noted in terms of allocation for the urban development. So before, if we compare with the past, last year, the 17% growth is noted. Then the maximum allocation, as rightly pointed out by the presenter before me, is for MRTS projects, metro rail, and related works, 36% of the total allocation, followed by PMAYU, Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana Urban, 24%, and Amrut, 10%, Swachh Bharat Mission, 5%. And other sectors to which attention has been paid or allocations have been made are E-Bus Seva, National Urban Digital Mission, NCIT, IIS, City Investment to Innovate, Integrate and Sustain. CIT IIS 2.0 initiative has been launched, and similarly for PMAYU 2.0 has been launched. Then, as pointed out, an Urban Challenge Fund of 10,000 crores is a new addition. Previously, in the past, no such allocation was made, but I think the attempt is to have a huge amount of funds which can be utilized in meeting various goals related to urbanization and urban development. Then I noticed that the livelihood mission and the smart city mission do not show any allocations this year. And perhaps these goals are being achieved through other initiatives. There are several initiatives, not only under the Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs, but other ministries who are attending to various aspects related to employment and contribution to cities. So that would be taken care of. Then sectors that have shown a growth in terms of allocation when compared with the previous budget are MRTS, 40% growth in terms of allocation when compared with the previous period, 25% for Amrut, and a slight increase is observed in E-Bus Seva, CIT, IIS, and NUDM when compared with the previous year in terms of growth. That is annual change over time. Then sectors that have shown a decline in terms of allocations are PMAYU and livelihood. Mission and SCM is almost zero in this budget, but PMAYU maybe perhaps some progress might have been achieved in the past, because of which the allocations have been reduced. But this is based on my general understanding and not based on backed by data. Then allocation for Swachh Bharat Mission Urban. That has remained constant. It was 5,000 crore previously also last year, and it stands at the same amount for this period also. About the from the speech made by the finance minister on 1st February, I noticed that the budget aims to initiate transformative reforms across 6 domains: taxation, power sector, urban development, mining, finance, and regulation. So it's quite an encouraging initiative in the sense that urban development has been given priority. It has been seen as an area where a lot of investments would occur in the coming years, and various goals would be achieved. So that's like a positive sign for the growth and development of the urban sector. Then elsewhere, at various places in the speech, references are made to proposals for rural development, MSME development, micro, small, and medium enterprises, tourism development, geospatial data would be made available, and research grants also. And all of these will indirectly or directly be addressing various urban challenges, as we are all familiar with. For urban livelihoods, it is mentioned a new scheme will be implemented, and the scheme for street vendors will be revamped. So I think the government has some new initiatives in mind insofar as urban livelihoods is concerned, and for again giving this support to street vendors in the form of loans and capacity building support so that they are able to do various economic activities. Then Urban Challenge Fund, which is a new idea, new thinking. It will address some of the proposals mentioned in previous years' budget on cities as growth hubs, creative redevelopment of cities, water and sanitation. And the financial pattern has been explained by the presenter before me, which is a debatable issue in the sense that whether local agencies, local governments would be able to manage that amount of funds, proportion of funds that would be needed to take these ideas forward. So I think the background has been set, and this is an ideal time to take the discussion forward, and the discussion can be conducted in the light of the background presented by IMPRI. The common question to all eminent speakers is that you might like to highlight or share your observations on this year's budget. Does it address the challenges? What has been the past experience in terms of allocations and utilization? In the news and the media, there's a lot of discussion on these aspects, that why so many new initiatives are being started and funds have not been utilized in the past, funds have lapsed, etc., etc. And as you know, as we all know, being in this field, a lot of work remains to be done when you look at cities and urban areas across India. When you compare it with cities, global cities, a lot of differences there on various fronts, whether it's air pollution, air quality, quality of water, and traffic congestion, and endless things that we are familiar with. So I would like to invite the panelists in an order, in no set order, I would say. Would IMPRI like to say something at this stage?
No, sir, Tikenderji is saying that he has to travel somewhere. So if we can have him first, so he's requesting.
Sure. Yes, certainly.
Thank you, Chair, because I'm in transit.
Okay.
Not Professor
So grateful
Tadagata.
to you. Happy to see you.
Yeah,
Grateful to you for taking out time and regularly
just reached. Actually,
participating in the dialogues.
today we didn't get the morning flight from Shimla, so I had to travel by road. Else I would have gotten much time to adjust myself. So am
please,
I audible?
you're most welcome.
Should I?
You're audible and we can see you, and please share your views.
Chair, Rumi Saab, can you hear me?
We can hear you. Yes.
Can you hear me, Rumi Saab? So how much time do I have? Or for that matter, every speaker?
Sir, around 7 to 8 minutes. 8
Great.
minutes.
So just say, so give me a reminder after 5.
Yes.
Well, thank you so much, and thank you everyone here. Some of the people who are here actually have been those from whom I've learned the basics of urban development, was Chetan Vedya, Tathagathaji, Malaya, and all. So it gives me great opportunity to speak with my, with my mentors. And of course, Rumi and I, our friendship dates back when we were together in Moscow for that BRICS conference. Rumi, I hope you remember all those very funny anecdotes and incidents that we've had together. Yeah. So, and thank you, IMPRI, Arjun. So what I'm going to do is a little departure here. And I think, to me, how do I look at this budget? I think my first observation is, and it's a question mark that I want to raise, that has the 2025-26 budget, has it missed the bus in the cities? And I think it has actually missed the bus. And to me, why is urban missing from the discourse? I mean, though we talk about some 97,000 crore, but this is just peanut if we just look at the overall scenario that exists. And I would also like to begin from the year 2015, when we had the NDA government that was sworn in 2014, and it positioned itself. There was lots and lots of discussion, and in fact, lots of enthusiasm amongst all of us that, look, because this comes from a very urban-centric political dispensation, and we will have something happening in the urban scenario, and so urban development will be a key pillar in its growth strategy. Unfortunately, that doesn't stand, and rightly so. That was there because, as was pointed out, we are still not clear how much do the cities contribute. Some say it's 67%, but let's put some modest 65 to 67% to the country's GDP and about 90% of government revenue. And mark my words, Rumi, this is our century. This century belongs to the Indian urban workforce, Indian urban people. So therefore, there has to be major disruption and a major shift that I do not find in any of the budgets that have taken place. So given their critical role in the economy, I think proactive interventions were expected to ensure what we've been arguing for is sustainable urban growth. But however, if you see the broader journey of development and the government's vision, what is a Viksit Bharat? I mean, is it just a mere rhetoric, or how do we want to achieve some of the basic elements of Viksit Bharat? Is it per capita income? Then we have seen the gap that exists between the poorest of the poor in the villages and the cities. If it was some 10 years ago, 500 times between the top 10% and the bottom 10%. In rural India, it was more than 50,000 times. I do not find that budget addressing. In fact, you've only pointed out how some of the very rudimentary schemes that could have given some cushion are also being taken off. So the government, why has, and according to me, actually, it's not even talking about urban development, particularly smart cities initiative, which was supposed to be the lighthouses that we've seen. Now, the second part that I want to say is what was needed, if you ask me. I think I would request all our speakers to just have a look at, and actually this should have also come in the presentation, at the economic survey. That gives us a glimpse of what happened in the passing year. And the survey paints a very sobering picture, Rumi, of the economy, where what is happening. Let's try to understand. I think to me, of course, everyone will look from one's own lens. But how do I understand it? That while we've seen that the corporate profits have definitely surged, but wage growth has not kept at pace. I mean, we've seen the data. I don't have to repeat here. that the corporate profitability reached a 15-year peak. I mean, just imagine, I mean, in the last 1.5 decade, driven by financial gains. And just to take the 50 nifty top companies, and the profits rose from 2.1% of GDP, I'm talking about, in fiscal year 2003 to 4.2% in fiscal year 2024. I hope I'm audible here because it's showing I'm having an unstable connection. Am I being listened?
Audible. Yeah, audible.
Rumi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, then it's fine.
Yes.
So just imagine, what does it mean? I mean, look at these profits. And actually, the little that the government could have done is, if we talk about inclusive growth for a Viksit Bharat and the way the urbanization is happening, and I don't have to remind, I mean, of course, Professor Chetan Vaidya is here. Unlike urbanization of the West, where, you know, urbanization was preceded by two historic events that, you know, it was preceded by industrialization. And of course, they had the colonial loot at their command. That's how they were able to sustain urbanization. India's urbanization is driven by poverty. And if we have to talk about, even in the flimsiest of grounds, about sustaining India's urbanization, then there has to be a very proactive social intervention that has to take place. But this glaring disparity, I think we don't find that to be addressed. Now, what does it mean? I mean, if you ask me, I mean, what does it mean for urban India? I would say the three elements, primarily that, and we all know that the transfers to urban India primarily occur through three basic channels. One is that there is direct transfers to the urban local bodies. The center is what we call the centrally sponsored schemes. And the third is the central sector schemes. Now, we also know that the direct transfers to the urban, let me come to the first one. The direct transfers to the urban local bodies is one of the lowest if we see in some of the developing nations across the world. It's somewhere around 0.5% to 0.8% of GDP. Look at the profits that I mentioned earlier. So the intergovernmental transfers to the ULBs is not even 1% of the GDP. Actually, that should have been one of the aspects that should have been addressed, but we do not find. In fact, there has been a reduction on that count as well. Likewise, if you see centrally sponsored schemes, the direction is very clear. And here also, in the centrally sponsored schemes, Rumi, you also know that it's a partnership scheme. So the government will spend some money, and then it will ask the state governments, the provincial governments, and of course our city governments to share this. And central sector schemes, as we know, are completely union controlled. I mean, there the money would flow in a very political wish. I mean, there's nothing wrong in it. The point is how this money is being spent also needs to be seen. And I'll just come to that. Now, if you see the total outlay, as has been pointed out, is definitely higher than the last year's budget. But if you look at the closer look, and also taking into consideration a modest inflation rate, then you will find that the outlay actually is not too great. And something that should not be missed out is look at the revised estimates, Rumi. The revised estimates suggest that by March 2025, there is a reduction of almost 23%. So it's a criminal negligence, according to me, so far as the urban India is concerned, that this is what you had projected. Who knows? I mean, now you have projected an outlay of 96,000, but all of a sudden you'll find, because that is what exactly happened. I mean, you have actually brought your total outlay for the year in the revised estimate to less than to somewhere around 63,000, though your budget was somewhere around 82,000, 23%. So what is it? Where exactly has the reduction taken place? I think you rightly pointed it out that one of the biggest shortfalls, which was supposed to be one of the driving forces, and if you have to talk about inclusive urbanization, then Awas, and we remember in my childhood days hearing these slogans, Roti, Kapda or Makan. So I don't think that Roti also is very important. I don't want to go into the right to food security, but that doesn't come, I mean, of course, that comes under domain, but I would not spend time there. But what about Awas? I mean, if you have millions of people who live, who are actually not just living on the streets, but at the same time 95% of those living in your homeless shelters are working class people. And if they are actually squatting just outside your cities, then something very vigorously should have been thought of. And it's not just, houses, but also about rental scheme. We do not find a word on that. So there is a very, this budget has seen a drastic cut in the revised estimates to just 13,000, where it was estimated, Rumi, I think you said 30,170.61 crore, and in revised 13,000 crore. So just imagine the cut that has happened in Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana. Now, where has actually the total outlay has actually completely misaligned with the urgent need to bridge infrastructure gaps in cities. So instead of focusing on pressing concerns such as employment and sustainable development, the emphasis actually remain on very high capital intensive projects, and see metro being, and metro, as I said, is a central sector scheme where massive flow of money, and it is ironically the place where you find a higher revised estimate. What you had estimated in the previous budget, but in the revised estimates you find more money has been given. So it's basically capital intensive, technological driven urbanization that we are witnessing. And whether it's sustainable or not, I think we all know that it is not the sustainable form in which it can lead. Not talking about governance, because if we have to talk about Viksit Bharat, what kind of governance are we talking about? Just look at the total outlay has also been reduced. Whereas we know that, and this has come from the government sources, just to remind some of our participants here, that after the introduction of the GST, the own source revenue of urban local bodies across India has fallen by almost 21%. So you required some imaginative, and I don't know, Rumi, whether you are aware of that, but the government of India is bringing out a model municipal act. Initially, they invited me. Now they've stopped inviting me, because I said, who all are preparing a model municipal act? So bunch of you bureaucrats. I said, if a model municipal act is to be built, then it has to be some of those who have actually led the cities, former mayors. Now, the moment I said this, now they've stopped inviting me. So we can imagine what kind of governance models are we also expecting, around the corner. So the point is that if you're reducing your allocation, I mean, your cities have gone up, your towns numbers have gone up, but your total outlay has declined from 26,653 crore to 26,158 crore. I mean, it's actually I can point out it's some kind of criminal negligence. Now, coming to centrally sponsored schemes, and as we have seen that PMAY, I've already pointed out, Swachh Bharat Mission and the Smart Cities Mission. So PMAY, we've seen there's a reduction of 30%. Likewise, if you see Amrut, there's a decrease, in fact, from 10,400 crore to 10,000 crore, which is actually so much required. And what is also required is some imaginative thinking that should have happened with Amrut and SBM, because the convergence of the two that should have taken place between our census towns and the statutory towns. But this has come very starkly out in the Kerala experience, where you have large census towns where you cannot utilize your urban funds and you cannot utilize your Swachh Bharat rural funds, whereas the infrastructure doesn't see, doesn't see those limits and boundaries. So that imagination also we find quite missing here. And likewise, if you see Swachh Bharat Mission, and what is it that we have not seen? And here also, I think that should have been pointed out by IMPRI. But just imagine that the outlay remains 5,000 crore, but look at the revised estimates. We'll spend 56% less than the allocated amount. And there only 2,159 crore has been spent. So what is it that is happening in the country? I don't have to point out. The Supreme Court had to point out that the new minarets that are being erected in cities like Delhi. Earlier we had the large symbols and epitomes, but now you have large symbols and epitomes of waste getting generated, and while in one of the observations in the Supreme Court. So you can easily see, where is this? You have a large component of money being spent for capital-intensive technologies, even in the Swachh Bharat Mission Urban. We need not to miss the point that where is the money spent? Money is being spent to actually buy large machines to broom the cities instead of creating. So what simply could have done is to imaginatively think of some inclusive form of development in the form of Rumi, I would say, Urban Employment Guarantee Act would have some green jobs to be created. I mean, where is that imagination? Unfortunately, we do not find that in this budget. And to come to the central sector scheme projects, I think I have already pointed out that metros have taken the major share of that, and additional 3,000 crore infusion has also taken place. Even now, I would just two more things, Rumi. I hope I have 2 more minutes to go. 2 more minutes?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
So one is this, this Urban Challenge Fund. Now, I would say it's the biggest ridicule. I mean, it's as bad as what we have seen in the smart cities. Now, why are they not talking about smart cities? And I am actually trying to write a series on what you can quote unquote failure of smart cities in the country. Let me cite here an example from Shimla, because that's the town that I come from. I don't know who all were doing this shitload of work that has come up in their comprehensive plan that they created. Now in Shimla, they estimated that 1,000 crore rupees is what they're going to generate out of PPP projects. Rumi, do you know how much money has been pumped in from PPP? Not even a single penny. So let's understand what is happening in the cities. The private capital is only going to come where you have some basic framework being laid out. And without that basic framework, to think that it's the private capital, now the new Urban Challenge Fund that is there, thinks that 1 lakh crore of developmental activities and cities as growth hubs and creative development cities will be created. Do we not know who is going to grab this money? It's a completely exclusionary process, and also the exclusionary centers that are going to. Bangalore would have the capacity, maybe a few larger cities. What about small towns? What about your 4,500 census towns? What about your, some 25,000 villages or on the brink of being urban? I mean, thanks that we do not have a census yet. And 50,000 crore is expected of private investments, bank loans, bonds. Who's going to buy a bond of a city? I mean, except Pune Pimpri is also again gone, because Pune Pimpri, the largest share is to come from Octroi. After GST, we've seen how the cities have been robbed of their own source revenues. So I do not think this to be, this is again one of the paranoia that struck us in 2000. I mean, it struck quite early, but what K.C. Sivaramakrishnan used to say, that, writing an obituary of the 74th Constitutional Amendment. What should have happened is revisiting and democratically decentralizing processes in even these fund allocations. Unfortunately, I do not find any of that sort here in the budget, Rumi, and therefore, to me, it is A, very exclusionary, B, it's absolutely unsustainable, and mark my words, just like your smart cities, abject failure, this is going to be, this is my preface, this is going to be an abject failure, because we've worked in the cities, and I think none of us is not aware of the fact, the way cities are heading. So what the bigger picture, the last point that I want to make here is that, yes, I've said this earlier also, it's more for capital-intensive projects and less focus on employment generation, and no focus on green jobs or sustainable economic policies, while definitely we require infrastructure investments, but neglecting social and economic equity in cities could widen existing disparities, and which could instead of social cohesion, this is definitely going to lead to social disruptions and social tensions that we easily witness in different parts of the cities. be it on the issues of identity or be it in the issues of migration inside, outside. In fact, there is no vision how how we should have gone ahead. So what I think urban India needed was a robust employment strategy, a stronger devolution to the local bodies. We've seen inverse of that happening, and people-centric policies. But budget, to me, has largely overlooked these priorities. I think I end here. Thanks.
Thank you, Tikender. That was a very extensive, detailed sharing of experience by you, and you covered a lot of ground. You brought in several aspects that draw our attention to the areas of concern. I understand, in your opinion, the budget and the budget proposals are not meeting the expectations, and I agree to a great extent with you. I think it's the work that the government of India and the urban ministry is doing is they have a lot of work in their hand, but the issue is that many of the initiatives are not connected very well with the ground reality. You gave numerous examples in this regard, that the case of PPP and the private sector would work in some areas, they would not be available in other areas. I myself have visited many urban centers in the country, and there is no private expertise there. So different strategies, I believe, would work at different places, and it's going to be has to be a combination of investment in infrastructure plus the upliftment of the society. I may not be able to summarize everything that you said. Basic problems you said are not being addressed, such as housing, employment. More allocations are needed. Several programs have been overlooked. Very important challenges have been overlooked. And an important point, devolution of funds to municipalities. Very important. I don't know how much progress is being achieved under the state finance commissions that have been constituted, but I'm sure numerous problems would have been experienced on this front. So we'll just move forward in this discussion.
Rumi, just one word. Please pardon me. I would have loved to speak about our experiences in Kerala, but that was maybe some other time, and also my non-disclosure agreement with the Kerala government, because we've just submitted an interim report. Not that it is quite not aligned with what is happening, but what disruptions are required. I would have loved to speak on that. Some of which are, to me, extremely important in the current context. But maybe we'll park it for some other time.
Yeah, once you know that the time is there for sharing of those ideas, when there are no conflicts with the Kerala Commission, then would be a good time to present. I think
we'll be out by April. So definitely after April.
IMPRI should organize, and we will all be looking forward to hearing from you about your experience there. So thank you once again on behalf of IMPRI. I thank you, and would like to move forward in this presentation. Thanks, Tikender, for the very good inputs. We will look at this as a report would be prepared by IMPRI. Now is the time to move and forward and invite the second distinguished speaker. If everybody agrees, I would like to invite Professor Mahalaya Chatterjee, if she is connected at this point. Yes, we can see you and hear you.
Thank you. It's a ritual to thank IMPRI for this annual event. Now, the thing is that speaking after Tikender is a bit difficult, because what I have to say is almost covered by Tikender. So the thing is that what I thought now our finance minister talking in general about budget, not about the urban affairs. Every year our finance minister fixes some goals or points or something, and he likes to name it very name. Sometimes it Navaratna, sometimes it Shaptarshi. This time no name, but her priorities have decreased. It has come to 3. Now, of these 3, and he says that these 3 are engines. These 3 are engines, and the reforms are going to be the fuel of the engines. Now, that is where my apprehension lies. That what about that if urban development becomes a fuel to these 3 engines, where is urban development? Where is urban development is going to take us? That is my feeling. Now, of course, I'm not saying that in the very beginning, she have talked about strengthening urban livelihoods for poor and vulnerable groups, scheme for socio-economic upliftment of vendors, and this UPI-linked credit card, etc. For this through this PM Sonidhi for street vendors, etc. It's not that the poor and the vulnerable are not there, but if you proceed along the budget speech, you will find that urban sector reforms, generally speaking, our budget do not take into account what has happened before. It does not bring any reference to the previous budget. But here, the finance minister has drawn urban sector reforms as a continuation of the July budget. The continuation of the July budget, that's a very good thing, because generally speaking, with our budgets have become so-called self-sufficient type of things, because budget is not fitted into any long-term plan or program as that was being done during the planning commission period. So budgets are being self-sufficient. We have to find out how this particular budget fixes into the jigsaw of the whole development scenario. And what are the things about which will be covered in urban sector reforms? That is governance, municipal reform, services, urban land and planning. So urban planning is coming again and again. But and also he is saying that all of these things will be incentivized. So I'm not sure how this reform process will be incentivized. What are how governance or municipal services, urban land and planning, as urban is typically a state subject, will the states be incentivized? So we are moving away from a competitive structure, competitive thing, what we have found in the smart cities mission, that the cities have to compete to be in the smart cities list, and others now they will be incentivized to do these things. This is a query for me. What type of incentives the states will get, and how they will proceed. Governance, municipal service, urban land and planning, all of them are very important if you talk about a sustainable urbanization for a long term. And so if the process is not very clear, and how it is fitting into, I'll come to that later on, how it is fitting into our whole development trajectory, including rural and urban. The first and foremost thing I would like to say, that as the census did not happen, and we are not sure when it will happen, or whether at all it will happen, we are not very sure about the urbanization process that is taking place in our country for the last 15 years. In 2011, we saw it was an exodus from agriculture, exodus bulging the service sector, etc. And service sector, along with its informal tentacles spread over everything and others. Now, whether there is any drastic change after the COVID, the return migration, what we have seen, or anything, we are not at all sure about that. So when we are talking about urban reforms, firstly, as Tikendra has already pointed out, that what would happen to 4,500 census towns, what would happen to the smaller towns and others. smaller towns are other, or these urban sector reforms are meant for big cities and metropolitan towns only, as the so-called metro projects and others have taken about a large part of the so-called budget for transportation and others. So I presume it is meant for metropolitan cities and bigger cities and towns, and not for the towns and cities in the lower hierarchy of our day. Here comes the question of this urban challenge front. Tikendar has already pointed out this is going to be a farce. This is going to be a farce for one or two reasons. Firstly, I think in the last budget, I expressed my apprehension for this, for a particular thing that is a creative redevelopment. Now, this creative redevelopment, I am very afraid. What we have seen in Varanasi, maybe Varanasi has now become a world-class city, and this particular urban challenge fund that is taking Varanasi, Surat, and Visakhapatnam as model cities. But are we going to lose our traditional cities, our heritage cities, heritage and others? Some cities are known for some particular issues. In the name of creative redevelopment, are we going to destroy them? Then, of course, cities, again, in the last budget, they were talking about transit-oriented development and others. And I think that was an attempt to link with the transportation development and urban. But now there is no to that, but but they are saying that this fund will be used for developing city as growth hubs. Now, growth hubs for what? Growth hubs for what? As we have seen in the economic survey, they have seen that the number of self-employed across the gender is growing at a bulging rate. And now this self-employed can mean anything. It may mean a street hawker. He is also self-employed. Maybe a woman sitting at home doing some reselling jobs, taking advantage of the social media like Facebook and others, displaying things and taking advantage of this online transaction and the courier service. That is also self-employed. Now, are we trying to create in growth hubs on this nitty-gritty, very small self-employed workers, or we are failing to think big by expanding the formal service sector for the other things? Then again, water and sanitation, again, very important, very, very important for sustainability of a city. It's the key that maintains the ecological stability of the city. Again, but what is going to be the next step? In January, we have seen that water metering, water pricing came as an issue, but when that was posed to the states, most of the states across political line refused, because giving water has a political connotation, so pricing water has its problem. And here comes the question that this fund, 25% of the cost of the bankable projects. Now, what does that mean? Bankable projects have a commercial connotation, that what you are doing, you have the chance to get back the whole thing. So at least 50% of this has to be raised from the market in terms of bonds, bank loans, and PPPs. Now, we already had the bitter experience of municipal bonds. Say 25 years ago, there are very, very big hulabu about municipal bonds, which started in Ahmedabad, Gujarat, etc. And also this pooled funds in smaller towns of Tamil Nadu, but the experience was not at all good. Same with bank loans. What we have seen when hardcore, etc., withdraw from giving soft loans for infrastructure and others. Even in the hardcore period, we have seen that the commercial project municipalities, smaller municipalities were interested in commercial projects, we would pay back. So we saw so-called commercial halls like in West Bengal. We have lots of Robindra Bhavan and other things even in a small municipality built on hardcore loans, because they can be rented and the loan can be paid back. But not so bankable commercial projects did not get any attention. attention so that loans for bus stands, etc., basti redevelopment, they were not takers for anything. And PPPs, the PPPs, the private partner um, uh, will work for the so-called private, his private profit. So private profit and social benefit does not go together. So but it becomes that the private partner commands all things so that the social benefit, social development takes a backseat. Now, of course, another very important point, and I think a very good point, that the National Geospatial Mission takes into account the modernization of land records, urban planning and design and infrastructure project. This is very, very, very important, I think, especially the modernization of land records. We have very hazy land records all over the country, especially in the urban area, so that we see so-called illegal encroachments, others, property rights, etc. The so-called Rajiv Awas Yojana could not prosper much because of this dispute over land rights and others. Land rights and others. So that is a very important. If that is carried on in the right way, of course, that will be a benefit. That will be a benefit. But at least from the budget speech, we do not have any idea about how this is going to happen. How this geospatial mission will take into account the modernization of land records, and that helping that and taking that into account the so-called urban planning and design of infrastructure project. Then I'm coming to the last part, which is about, this is directly about urban. Now, what about the indirect effects on the urbanization or urban process? I would like to just point out two or three things. Firstly, the housing, affordable housing for middle income and other things. Now, if a housing project of that dimension that goes on increasing for affordable housing for middle income and others, that will have an impact on urbanization, urban amenities and others. And do we have any parallel plan for extending this urban amenities to these affordable housings and transportation? If it is for middle class, of course, we have to plan for public transport and others. So this affordable housing, Goti Shakti, how that is going to affect urbanization, and whether these funds are allocated for this new and upcoming things, that is a question thing. And the second example I would like to give about tourism. Now we have talked about that tourism will be there will be employment growth, and it takes into account the homestays and other type of things in the tourism sector. Now there also my question, the experience I have from visiting so-called ecologically beautiful places, natural scenarios and others, lots and lots of homestays have come out. But the local government is totally unable to take into account the other effects of this type of thing. When we urban people go to these homestays, the beautiful natural places with natural scenarios and others, we are also damaging the ecological sensitivity and others. We go on throwing plastic bottles and paper napkins and or food packets, including the so-called aluminium foils, etc. And especially the rural government, most of these places are in the rural domain. They were not trained, they were not skilled to take into account all these things. Because this needs specialized training for solid waste management especially, and also taking the so-called natural drainages and other. Because in most of the hilly places and others, the natural drainages are only drainage. We don't have any built-in sewage system or anything. So this damages are carried on to the hilly rivulets, rivers, etc. And the so-called local government is unable to take into account anything, any of these burdens. They are not financially able. They are not, as far as human resources are concerned, nobody is trained to do that. So when you are taking tourism-led employment, you also have to be aware that this is again a source for urbanization. source for urbanization. So who will take into account, who will take care of this evils of urbanization, evils of urban people visiting these places, damaging these places, not only in terms of natural but also they have their own, what they do in the cities, they do the same thing when they visit these places. So what will happen? Now this resort, etc. Their owners say that we dump it outside. We dump it outside and we don't know how to do that. So a parallel plan should be made for this. Otherwise our concentration, as Tikandar has rightly said, our concentration of we don't have any way to deal with this neoliberal form of urbanization, just banking on the big cities and metropolitan cities. We have to think of the process that those are taking place and the incentives and other that what the government is planning to do. What will it happen to the urban scenario, especially in the small and medium towns, especially in the tourist spots and others, and are we ready for that? So let me stop here. Maybe I can add later.
Thank you, Professor Chatterjee. I think you analyzed the aspects on which the money that would be generated under the Urban Challenge Fund, such as cities as growth hubs, creative redevelopment of cities, and water and sanitation, very well. And we have noted your points. Two things I would like to say about the data on urban population. You're absolutely right. When you do not know how much the population is, it is difficult to estimate the requirements of that population. Maybe the government departments are maintaining the data on their own. They are not sharing in public domain, and they are working with those data. But all of this should be available in public domain. It should be a transparent style of functioning, so that the public is also aware of how things stand at the moment insofar as urbanization and urbanization level is concerned. You also raised a very valuable point on tourism. There are several proposals on tourism by the government of India, and I fully agree with you that when you encourage such activities, when you develop such activities, all things that are affecting are being affected by tourism have also to be attended to. In this case, the support that's needed by local bodies to manage the pressure that's being created as a result of tourists visiting those cities. Very recently in the TV, they were showing a film on Gulmarg about the tourists visiting Gulmarg and the huge garbage that's being generated there. Waste management issues are there, and it spoils the beauty of the place. So very valid points shared by you. Thank you very much. We will move forward in this program, and it's a good time to invite Professor Chetan Vaidya to come in and share his views about this year's budget. Professor Vaidya shared several aspects in the last discussion that we had, and as rightly pointed out by Professor Mahalaya Chatterjee, that there is a connection between the previous budget and this budget, and Professor Vaidya's views are most welcome.
Thank you, Rumi, for those kind words. I also want to thank Arjun for this opportunity, annual opportunity to meet all of you and listen to such interesting discussion. And also thank you, Tripta, for that introduction, and thank you, Ria. I would love to get that PowerPoint on my email if possible. I would start with this, that India urban is very large and very diversified. So one size fit all is not going to work. Nirman Bhavan cannot, where the ministry's office is there, cannot decide what the country will do. So that is my very broad kind of thing. I would also say that the budget to me is like kahi khushi, kahi gum kind of thing, you know. I am very happy that as independent director of Gift City, we have got lot of simplifications of regulation and lot of exemptions, particularly that the units which set up in Gift are getting tax exemption 2030. Another 5 years of extension has been given, and a lot of other benefits have been given to insurance, non-resident insurance people, transfer of existing funds, treasury centers, and also which are ship leasing units. And all this is leading to a very more vibrant Gift City, which is going to be the new financial center, international financial center of India. We provide in Gift City, we provide very good infrastructure, and we are very proud of it. We have district cooling center, we have ducts for solid waste management, we also have green buildings. But I think when you want to develop that kind of city center of international level, which you can compete with London, Singapore, New York, it is not enough to attract global investors, it's not enough to a good infrastructure, but you also need simplified and good regulations. And all that we are now very positively looking at Gift City, and I am very happy to see this. I'm also very happy to note that this budget is providing for a geospatial mission, it has been mentioned earlier, which will help us for land records and urban planning. We bring in more GIS, AI into urban development and land, which is positive. I am, like many others people said, I'm okay. I'm very unhappy with this, what we call as this whole urban challenge fund. I'm extremely unhappy with it, as mentioned earlier by my two earlier speakers. I think this 25% support from the national government and remaining from PPP or bonds or resource mobilization of local bodies is only going to, as you mentioned, 3 cities, Surat, Varanasi, Vizag, maybe you could enter Indore to it, or maybe 1 or 2 cities like Bangalore, which was mentioned earlier. But it's not going to help our 4,000 plus 2,000 census towns. It's not going to help them. This is only something which will not happen to, even to a city like Baroda, it may not be able to provide support. So which is very unfortunate, and I think we missed the bus as mentioned earlier. Very positive to see that street vendors credit cards have been extended from 10,000 to 30,000, which is very positive. I think we have helped 68 lakh people under the scheme, and they will benefit. Also, middle class is being considered in case of this area. Now, the more question is, the important question is, how do we empower our local bodies in the spirit of 74th Constitutional Amendment? I'm again happy that Smart City has not been supported in this particular budget. That would mean, hopefully, the special purpose vehicle they are working against the empowering the local bodies will hopefully go away. I also think that the 15th Central Finance Commission has done more for employing urban local bodies than our national budgets. Even if you take a simple thing like service level benchmark, audited accounts, and other things which have been provided by performance budget, performance support by 15th Finance Commission, seems to be very positive in this. The Keshav Verma Committee was set up by Government of India to improve urban development in the country. It has submitted its report. We were expecting that some of the recommendations of this report will get reflected in the union budget, this year's union budget. Unfortunately, that has not happened. It seems the Keshav Verma Committee report has been totally ignored. And parallelly, when I see Kerala Urban Mission, which Mr. Panwar is the vice chairman of that mission, you see that that has been mentioned by the governor's speech as well as in the budget of Kerala. So you just see how one state continues to remain ahead of the national government in India. We have a lot of lessons in urban reforms. I think we have lessons on urban reform. Rumi has worked on JNURM with us. And we know there are so many lessons we could learn from JNURM. We could learn from our limitations from smart city. There were also 11 reforms in Amrut city, Amrut mission in 1.0. Unfortunately, we have not learning from this in our present budget. As mentioned earlier, many projects many missions like NULM, which is more to do with inclusive development, as we mentioned earlier. The budget is not inclusive, budget is exclusive, and I wish we could have more ground level work on this budget, which would have been very helpful. I'm going to stop at that, and thank you so much for this opportunity. Thank you,
Thank
Rumi.
you. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Professor Vaidya. I was taking notes as you were speaking because you briefly, you were brief, but you covered a lot. And your reactions on the small aspects, each and every aspect of the budget were coming out very strongly. About the example of Gift City that you gave, it's very encouraging to know that support is being received from the government, and I hope such support is received at other places also, so that there is balance in the development of newly emerging cities or new centers that are being developed. And the second thing that you pointed out most aptly was that local inputs are not reflected in this huge exercise of ideally the data is generated from the ground level, and all the policies and proposals are based on those sets of data. But if this is not happening, it's not a very good sign of how things should be carried out, executed on the ground. And there is going to be, in this approach, there is going to be the problem of exclusion, certain communities benefiting, certain cities benefiting, others neglected, disparities increasing, both intra-urban and within cities also. Cities governed by a certain political party receiving more attention as against others. So this is not a very, I would say, very healthy sign insofar as managing urbanization in India is concerned. I think more systematic efforts are needed, and if there are knowledgeable people, if there are reports like the one that you mentioned about the Keshav Verma committee report, if such extensive exercises are being done, then it will be necessary to incorporate the ideas that are being shared by such eminent persons. So, sir, we'll just move ahead in the program. Thank you very much for your inputs. Please stay with us as we continue the discussion. And I would like to invite Professor V.N. Alok, who works at the IIPA in the capacity of a professor, Indian Institute of Public Administration, to help us understand the nuances of the data that are provided in the allocations for the urban ministry. Over to you, Professor Alok.
Sir, he has not joined traveling, so we can go to Tathagata.
Okay, yes, certainly. Professor Tathagata Chatterjee, if you are connected, then please, you're most welcome to share your views about what you think this project offers to the citizens of this country.
Thank you, Dr. Rumi. It is nice to see you through the online mode once again. And thanks also to Arjunji for facilitating what Chetanji and Mohana ma'am was saying about our annual get-together. So delighted to be part of this exercise. Now coming to this budget, I would, broadly concur with the views expressed by Tikender Saab, Professor Chatterjee, and Professor Vaidya before me. I would mention, if I'm to take a little bit broader look about the budget and see the trend of the budget since the launching of the JNNURM in 2005. So on the whole, there is a trend that comes clear as that the central government has started focusing more extensively on improving urban infrastructure and started pushing for more funds. This budget more or less keeps to that trend. I mean, the JNNURM, then Amrut, Smart Cities, and now this Urban Challenge Fund. So there is a general trend towards capital intensive, technology driven urban solutions which are being forwarded and mediated through central interventions. And the central government's role as a whole in the urban sector is rising, and using these financial instruments, the central government is increasingly becoming a key player in India's urban sector, even though urban sector as a whole is a state subject. But the very fact that we are discussing the urban sector allocation in the union budget shows how much importance that the central government's role has become in the urban development sector and setting the new policy directions. So I see that this new city challenge fund being launched is basically an extension of that idea. That is to let the cities start becoming more and more self-financing rather than depending upon intergovernmental transfers. But while this as a macro policy idea seems appealing, its ground level manifestation seems more complicated. So one case in the point is the credit rating taken up during the Amrut projects. So we all know that under the Amrut, about 400 and credit rating of over 470 cities were done, out of which 36 cities received investment grade. And out of these 36 cities, only 8 cities were able to float municipal bonds. Now, although municipal bonds is there in India, as Chetan sir knows very well, he has been a part of the entire process since 1998. But over the past 25 years or so, only 17 cities had been able to raise funds through the municipal bonds. So this leaves out large numbers of cities from being able to access the capital market linked financial possibilities, and by turn also this excludes them from accessing the urban challenge fund. So this challenge fund is going to, as Mohala ma'am has also mentioned and Tikender ji has mentioned, it is primarily going to benefit few number of cities which are of having high credit rating. Also recently a credit worthiness report has come up which shows that out of 30 cities that were assessed, and out of these 30 cities about 22 cities are credit worthy. Now the question is whether a credit worthy city would be able to raise funds. We are also in a situation of global economic downturn where the investors are becoming more and more choosy about where to invest on, whether to invest at all. So under that situation, the ability of this challenge fund to generate new urban development remains somewhat questionable. Also, the second point is that the Challenge Fund has identified 3 types of project. One is the city as a growth hub. The second is about creative urban renewal, and third about water and sanitation. While water and sanitation are well-established projects, they may be able to achieve public-private partnerships and access some amount of funds. But what is meant by city as a growth hub? Whether this means setting up of new urban centers, new greenfield urban development or not, that is not very clear. And if this is talking about new greenfield urban development, then we all know that issues of land acquisition is a big hurdle. So that is going to be acting in the process, and the progress is bound to be slow. Second is also the issue of creative urban renewal. What do we mean by creative urban renewal? Is it land place-based urban renewal, the type of which at a micro scale was attempted under the smart cities mission through the area-based development? Now, urban renewal is a very, very time-consuming process because large numbers of stakeholders involved. This can also mean that, upgrading of floor area ratios for to set up a mechanism through which the area will get gentrified or get developed. But unless this urban renewal is done in a planned manner, this can cause a lot of chaos within the city. One such example I would like to bring out in the case of Calcutta, where the government itself is very much bent upon developing some of the parts of the city which had been earlier, which were the institutional lands in the city in the area of Alipur jail and the presidency jail, which were institutional lands, and the zoo garden, to converting those green areas into real estate. So that kind of a land monetization, if it comes in the form of urban renewal and without proper planning, without integration with the ability of the city to absorb that kind of additional load without upgrading the transit systems or water systems, then we are going for a major urban crisis. What the second important item in the budget that appears very promising, it is about the setting up about the digitalization of the land records. Of course, as Professor Mohalya has mentioned, that land records is a huge problem area in Indian cities. If land records can be digitized and authentic land data becomes available, this can definitely be a spur for development. In Odisha, we have seen that under Jaga mission, land survey of the informal settlements, some areas was done, and land records were updated very, very quickly and in a participatory manner by involving the local communities through a combination of technology and people, through using the satellite imaging and drone survey. So these land records were digitalized and verified with the local population, and these had been helpful in slum redevelopment and giving land title to the people. Another positive aspect in the budget is the renewed funding for the National Digital Mission, where the National Urban Digital Mission, NUDM, which is working in the area of improving the governance and developing urban databases. This is definitely a positive aspect. But on the other hand, the question comes up about the assets generated under the smart cities mission. So the smart cities has come to an end and it is getting winded up. All the projects are more or less complete. What would happen to the assets created under the smart cities mission, especially the integrated command and control center? Who is going to take ownership of this command and control center? Whether these are going to be passed on to the municipal bodies, or they are going to be taken over by the state governments, or they are going to operate as independent entities. So clarity needs to be there about these assets created under the smart cities mission. However, the budget overlooks two very important areas. One is about the livelihood. As Tikender ji has mentioned, that PM Swanidhi program, which came into being in the wake of the COVID-19 crisis, and I mean, the finance minister in her budget speech mentioned that it has benefited about 68 lakhs people. That is fine, but on this year's budget, if fine reading shows that the allocation for the fund has gone down. Allocation of the fund has gone down from 444 crores to 373 crores. But nevertheless, the finance minister said that the scheme is going to be revived. So we'll have to see, revived and restructured. So we'll have to see, wait for that, what kind of restructuring it goes through. However, the most important setback or the missed bus to me in this budget, it's not addressing the issues of climate change. Indian cities are facing huge issues due to heating, urban flooding, and storm surges in the coastal areas, and greenhouse gas effects are rising. To, even in the urban heat island effect has now become almost a common term. I mean, earlier, I mean, this used to be a terminology which only the very specialist climatologists should be using, but now it has become a term of common use. I don't see much attention towards the climate issues in this year's budget. We are thinking that climate issue as a separate environmental issue. We are thinking urban as a separate issue, but there is a need to interlink the two. The climate issue received a somewhat interesting link in the form of prioritizing electric vehicles, and of course electric mobility in the form of mass rapid metro rails. But the metro rails, I mean, India is going to a huge expansion of metro rails, and over 20 metro systems are getting built. However, most of the metro rails, barring Calcutta, barring Delhi, most of the metro systems are struggling with the ridership. Even a metro rail in a big city like Mumbai and Bangalore, they are struggling with the ridership. So what the new metro rail is going to benefit, who it is going to benefit, this remains questionable. Metro rail is the most expensive form of mass transport, and it is viable in cities which has got very high density settlement within its 1 kilometer influence zone, and has got robust last mile connectivity. Without which metro rail turns out to be a white elephant. So there is a need to rethink on this metro rail centric urban development strategy. I see that, I mean, that even small cities like Gorakhpur and all are going to have the metro rails. So, but even very big cities like Lucknow and Jaipur, they are struggling with ridership. Bangalore is struggling. So, what is going to be the use of these metro rails? They are politically very important statements, no doubt, but their real life use is somewhat needs to have more in-depth research. Okay, with this, I would stop at this moment and wait for more views and discussions.
Thank you, Professor Tathagata Chatterjee. That was wonderful to know from you about your reactions on the budget. And you said many important things. And I liked your point about the looking at the trends over the years, to which sectors is attention being paid, has been paid, and how are the focus areas shifting from one post to another and to another. Your point about the lack of clarity in this document, insofar as the aspects that would be attended to under the challenge fund, is an important point. How or what is in the mind of the government insofar as creating cities as growth hubs or creating creative redevelopment of cities and water and sanitation. So more clarity should be provided so that everybody, all stakeholders are aware, and they can review the approaches being proposed and intervene as and when required. The point about cities' ability to raise funds is absolutely correct. These approaches of bonds and PPPs have worked at some places. There are examples in the country where some success has been achieved, but it cannot be applied universally to all urban centers. Wherever there is potential scope for engaging with the private sector, there it would work, but not everywhere. So thank you for your inputs. I think many new thoughts have been shared by you. I'm grateful to you for your for exposing us to these aspects, and thank you once again for your points. And I will now invite the next speaker, Dr. Soumyadeep Chattopadhyay, who teaches at the Vishwa Bharati University in Shantiniketan, West Bengal.
So Soumyadeep sir would also not be joining us today. We can
Trying to join. He's in university. Some intern. I'm checking. So Samir sir is here.
Oh, okay. So I was deliberately postponing Mr. Samir Unhale's talk because I think he would be best when he hears the work of scholars and the perspectives that they are presenting, and that would help him in commenting on what he has in mind insofar as the budget is concerned. So, Mr. Unhale, if you're there, please, you're most welcome to share your reviews.
Very good evening. Actually, sir, I'm traveling, so you might be hearing a lot of noise of metropolitan evening traffic. So please excuse me and bear with it. So am I audible, sir?
Yes, your voice is coming clearly.
Okay, thank you, because actually I'm traveling, so we might hear a lot of traffic noise, one of the major challenges with the Indian cities now. So thank you very much, sir, for the opportunity. I'm always happy to join with IMPRI because they do allow the actual practitioners also to share their thoughts. So thanks a lot for that. So regarding this union budget of 25-26, sir, the urban development and housing sector, I believe I had followed 3-4 very salient points. Was that the smart city mission and NULM do not have any budgetary allocation in 25-26. So probably we could consider this to be the final completion of these two missions as there is no financial allocation made in the year 25-26. Secondly is as it was shared earlier, that the total budgetary provision for the urban development, urban affairs and housing ministry was 96,777 crores. So which is a rise almost of almost 9,000 crores from the last financial year. And of course, that was said by sir that the new urban challenge fund of 10,000 crores, I think, is a new thing. And this probably is an indication that Indian cities need to move away from the grant doleouts which are made by the higher level of governments, and will have to really strive and work hard for the funds that they are looking for. And probably that should lead to increase in some professionalism and some efforts also being made by the cities on itself, because knowingly unknowingly the model that we have followed, it really goes into the grants coming from the higher level of government, whether they work out or not. So I believe this inclusion of the Urban Challenge Fund is, I think, is a great idea, and we should be. I personally feel, as a student of public administration, that this scope of this Urban Challenge Fund needs to increase more and more, and all other special grants which are given can be subsumed under this under this uh, under this I'm sorry under this sort of arrangement, because we have a challenge of increasing professionalism in Indian cities. Knowingly unknowingly we have got stuck up in the electoral mood of functioning of municipalities, and it being the schools of teaching democracy. I feel that was good enough 75 years back, but now we have to now take up professionalism and increase the professional efficiencies of the municipal bodies, starting from the municipal politicians. I think in that sense, this shift from the regular grants to challenge fund, in my opinion, will help in having greater professionalism in Indian municipalities. One thing, of course, came up, which it is not exactly, it's only an observation, that the ability of the municipal system of India to implement the expenditure made in the allocated in the budget estimates was probably suffered last year, because of the 86,000 crores which was allocated for the ministry. I think the actual the revised budget estimates is around 63 or 65,000 crores. So this drop of ability of the municipal systems to incur the annual budgetary estimates which are made available to the cities, I think, is also a lesson that we need to learn. And probably we should be, making the Indian municipalities and smart cities and other development authorities more competent to execute the projects, and in much lesser time span than it's taking now. I think there's a bit of red tapeism and ability of the municipal system to incur expenditure. I think if we go by this reduction in the actual execution, the difference between the revised estimate and the budget estimate, I think, could be a lesson which the municipal practitioners should learn for. And as probably was also shared earlier, apart from this 10,000 crore for the Urban Challenge Fund, where I got almost 20,000 crores for the PMAY 1.0, I think, which is will be getting over in this financial year. 6,000 crores were made available in all for the PMAY 2.0, including the rental housing for the industrial complexes. Another 10,000 crore is made available for the Amrut scheme, 5,000 crores for the Swachh Bharat mission, and 31,000 crores, as was mentioned earlier, for the metros, around 1.3 thousand crores for the electric buses for the sustainability and air pollution angle involved in the mobility of cities. 3,000 crores for the National Transport Authority, and of course 3,000 crores for the CPWD. This seems to be the overall budget allocation mentioned in the this year's budget. I think, as I also had shared earlier, that apart from the numbers of budget, certain policy direction and policy statements from the Honorable Finance Minister's speech need also some focus from our side. I think in the urban sector, I think in para 8 of the Honorable Finance Minister's speech, it is mentioned, it is identified, urban sector has been identified as an important domain for transformative changes. I think this is an important importance given to urban sector. Secondly, I think a new urban livelihood mission, the Ajivika, National Urban Ajivika Mission, is been needs to be probably get introduced in this financial year in para 48. Then in the PM Swanidhi scheme, which probably was an initiative taken during the COVID times, probably is getting strengthened, and it's getting revamped with additional capacity building. More credit card will be made available to every hawker with a limit of 30,000 rupees, and also they will be made eligible for higher loans, that which is mentioned in para 49 of the Honorable Finance Minister's speech. I think focus on urban sector reform as declared in July 2024 budget in para 57, I think is an important element because budget is just not the budgetary estimates and number game. And as was ideally identified, it need not be only for 1 year. Because if you take into consideration the budgetary allocations made for last 5 years, maybe from 2020, we see a certain, trend which is continuous. So a budget is not just a statement for one financial year, but we see continuation also in budgetary allocations and the policy statements made from maybe 2021, in which the Amrut and Swachh Bharat 2.0 was announced, and then the various others measures of TOD and policy statements which were made in last 5 years will have to be, considered in a totality. So I think this budgetary, I mean, the trend that we have to just discuss only on the 1 year's budgetary allocation, probably this statement, and I think in that case needs to be considered that we are now considering the entire spectrum of actions taken in last 4 to 5 years and just not 1 year. So I think that was an important element. And then apart from the urban challenge fund, as was discussed by our earlier esteemed panelists, I think the creative redevelopment of cities and water and sanitation sector, and most importantly, cities as the growth hub. The project for making cities an important economic hub, I think, is a very important point, because traditionally the Indian municipalities are stuck up in the 1850 era of municipal duties of water, gutter, and roads, and sewage and solid waste management. The economic angle of making cities, we all talk that the cities contribute to more than 60 or 70% of the global GDP. But in case of India, maybe if you leave aside the another 4 to 5 bigger cities, this the economic thinking of city planning and city functioning is very important, that we ought to have an economic driver. So in this context, I believe the shift from the regular solid waste management and water and sewerage towards this angle of having cities as economic growth is a very important point. The master use plan and the land use planning that we do in India, very little is actually the economic thought. The urban economic thought is very less, and I think in this case, this is a very major policy shift in, as mentioned in the Honorable Finance Minister's speech. So this, I think, apart from that, I believe the sorry. Similarly, in para 52 and para 54 of the Honorable Finance Minister's speech, it was mentioned that the move of preparing bankable project for the pipeline and asset monetization route for urban infrastructure, I think is also a very new way. Yes, I think it will take time, because the municipal finance is still stuck up in usual accounting and usual, the traditional and very elementary and rudimentary role that the municipal finance is into, and the new thoughts, new ideas which are being made available, which are need to be implemented, are slowly getting introduced in this policy statement. So in a way, I find this the directions of policies as referred into the budget speech. I'm finding them more interesting than the usual budgetary allocation, because the sectors are fairly known, and maybe a couple of percentage increase here and there do normally come up. But these policy statements, I think, are very crucial, and I hope that the municipal system is strong enough and flexible enough to accommodate and absorb, the changes that they need to make in their own functioning. Because if you see the project execution mode of the municipal bodies, or even the smart cities for that matter, I think there's a lot of things there to improve for people like us, to have a better execution strategy, the little bottlenecks that come out of the multiple agencies which are ought to operate in the Indian urban area. And probably these are the new areas, I believe, we will have to work. Of course, the SDGs, the focus of SDGs is always there. And what I found interesting about SDGs is that there is a specific timeline, there is a quantifiable target for the efforts which are being made into the usual functioning. So I hope, that some like the gender budget, like we could also have the climate budget for the urban sector. Also, we could work more on this SDG budgeting framework, even for the urban sector. And lastly, sir, I would say that as we know that the municipal sector gets more funding from the state governments. So probably, as it was, I think the RBI came up with the report on the state of Indian, I think state finances last month. And it has said that the total budget of all the states put together is more than that of union budget. I recollect reading that the union budget will be around maybe for 15 or 15.5% of the GDP. All the state budgets are around 16 or 6.5% of the GDP. So all the state governments put together are probably more powerful in the monetary terms than what is made by the union budget. So probably I think we also need to take a total holistic view of all the all levels of government and the budget that is made available for them. So I'm sorry, I'm traveling, so I'm sorry about this traffic noise, but I'm very I think thankful to you, Rumi sir, and all of our esteemed panelists for giving this opportunity to share some of my learnings out of the budget. And thanks a lot for that. And I'm sorry about this background noise, but it was inevitable. I was traveling. So thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Runale. Thank you very much. We did not hear the background noise. It wasn't distracting at all. So you were loud and clear, and we could hear every word that you shared. And I would like to thank you for your impressions, the positive impressions on the budget and the areas of concern that you've highlighted. There are many policy statements on paper, and we all hope that all of those statements see the light of the day. They are translated into projects and implemented on the ground. About your point on the reducing dependence on higher levels of government, the national government, the state government, is extremely important. You are right about it, that it's high time that the dependence should be reduced. ULBs and municipalities should be such that they should be independent bodies. They should have the ability to handle things on their own, so that the pressure on center also reduces. But for that, several things are required: training, capacity building. And who better than you can share the experience of how municipalities functions and what is the quality of personnel employed in these institutions. So very good inputs from your side. Thank you very much. You mentioned many points. It's impossible to summarize what you said, but we took notes and will be reviewing what you have mentioned and documenting your ideas also. I would like to ask IMPRI if other scholars have joined.
Not yet, sir. I think perhaps we can go ahead with a round of questions. If that's okay.
Yes, it is okay. And if the participants would like to share their thoughts, have questions for the panel speakers, please do so. You could just ask the participants.
If any participant has any questions, feel free to raise your hand, or we can, or you can put it in the chat box as well, your question.
We can give them some more time to think, and I will invite, if all the panel speakers who spoke are still connected, to share some concluding thoughts as to what further can be done insofar as preparation of the budget or the proposals that have been mentioned. Anything that the ministry or the central government should consider insofar as this annual exercise is concerned. Starting with Professor Mahalaya Chatterjee.
I don't think I have much to add. I agree with one point Subirunali has raised, that why should urban sector or urban centers remain dependent on getting grants from the higher level, be it state or A. They have to be independent, and this urban challenge fund can be a beginning for that. But the point is that what can be the alternative sources of fund for the smaller towns, small and medium towns, especially the smaller entities. One of my students have done his doctoral thesis. Professor Tathagato Chatterjee knows about it, in which he has done extensively worked on 6 municipalities of West Bengal and found out that most of the municipalities have already exhausted their sources. The property tax, if an urban center is not buoyant, property tax becomes a stagnant source. And the alternative sources have almost died, especially with GST. So, and some other things which we generally say that the municipal governments can collect and do, that is very difficult to do, like taxes on paints, etc., etc. Time and again they have been tried. So the alternative would be to find out alternative sources of revenue, own source revenue for the small and medium towns especially. And I think that has to be the onus of the so-called think tanks and other government institutions. Only then this urban channel fund challenge fund could be successful for hierarchies across our urban centers.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Tekender Panwar, Mr. Tekender Panwar is connected? Is he with us?
So I think he had
If not, as he is traveling or occupied, may I invite Professor Chetan Vaidya to give his concluding remarks?
I think two things which have been missing in this, which has been mentioned many times earlier. One is it's not inclusive enough. So I think the finance minister meets a lot of people before the budget is prepared. There is need to bring in some way how we can take the poor who can make their case to the finance ministry at the national level. I think that is something which is extremely important. And particularly when this new urban employment scheme or mission is being developed, what happens on the ground, and there are a lot of people working on the ground, civil society organizations, communities, which are working in their representation should be made to the finance ministry. That is one. And secondly, somehow urban climate change has been totally missed out from this budget, or not totally, but has been broadly missed out, which has been pointed out by some of the panel members. I think there's something need to be done in the next finance minister's budget. These were my two suggestions. Thank you so much, Rumi, for this opportunity.
Thank you, sir. We noted your points on inclusion, make it more inclusive.
Yeah.
Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas, as has been rightly propagated. And climate is an important aspect. If other ministries are attending to this aspect, then a reference to that should be made in somewhere. There has to be work done in collaboration, coordination among the ministries. And if the aspects of concern, as Professor Tathagata Chatterjee raised about flooding and heat and cold and and cyclonic activities that are harming the coastal areas, then adequate reference is to be made, and it has to be made clear as to how the ministry is attending to this insofar as allocations are concerned. So thank you, sir, for your thoughts and points. And Tatakata ji, are you there?
Yeah. Okay. So just to sum up, of course, I mean, this climate change and social inclusion seems to be the two big issues that are not received adequate attention in the budget. But on the whole, what I see that this budget is a status quo kind of a budget. It carries forward, I mean, the ideas that has been generating at the MOHUA, at the Ministry of Urban Development over the years. I mean, that the same idea is getting circulated and imprinted. However, there is a need to make a paradigm shift, particularly in the issue of climate change. And the issue of climate change cannot be addressed in isolation from the urban issues. So take, for example, the case of the electric vehicles, which received the electric mobility, electric vehicles received a lot of, focus in the budget, and there is a push towards increasing domestic production of the electric batteries and things like that. But at the end of the day, usage of the electric vehicle depends upon availability of charging points in the city level. So there has to be an integration about the urban aspects in the climate change debate in a much more forceful manner. And we cannot, continue to take an sectoral view, which is kind of, thinking in the silo mentality. So in that context, that the economic survey rightly identified, this climate change as one of the biggest threats to the India's future, and of course, identified as a opportunity to drive towards a green transformation. Now we know globally that cities account for 70% of the greenhouse gas emissions. So when the global scenario is like that, 70% greenhouse gas emissions comes from the cities. And even the Sustainable Development Goals Framework has identified SDG 11 as the urban goal. And the urban goal has got links to all other goals. So the city is the pivot on which the issue of the climate change needs to be seen. And in that sense, unless we start focusing on a city as a spatial entity, the issue it's not going to get addressed in a holistic manner, and we keep chasing isolated segmented goals. So with this, I would like to stop.
Thank you, Professor Chatterjee. I found your point interesting that all the interrelated aspects that are affecting the functioning of a city, that are determining the environmental conditions in city, should be taken into account as India progresses, moves forward in its urban agenda. So, very valid point. There are, as I said, there are parallel ministries that are attending to some of the aspects related to the greening of cities. There is a national mission on mobility, green mobility, green electric vehicle mission, which has done a lot of work on paper, at least. They have they are emphasizing, they are taking steps to launch electric vehicles in different cities of India. Many public transportation buses are being launched in the city of Delhi, about 800 to 1,000 that run on electric power. So things are being done, but the takers are less. This usage, as you mentioned, varies from user to user. The two-wheeler industry is growing at a faster pace as compared to motor vehicles, uh, four-wheelers and other vehicles. And the taxi services, maybe it has been made mandatory for the taxi service providers to shift to green taxis. So several taxi operators, these have like Ola and Uber are using electric vehicles to offer services to the citizens. So thank you very much. And Mr. Onale is still there with us.
I think he had to leave, so he's
He had to leave. So I think we have overshot the time that was set for completing this program, and I would like to thank all the distinguished speakers. Oh, I have 2 points to say at the end before I hand over to IMPRI. One is that it is important to ensure accountability of the executing agencies. There are many, although the center is giving funds and the funds are being handed over to the state governments, but at the local level, people are working to implement the projects. So accountability, whether it's the local government or a parastatal agency like DDA in Delhi, accountability has to be built in. Whether some allocations should be done for that is something to be thought about. The second thing is about capacity building. With growing responsibilities and receipt of funds, the agencies at the local level should be in a position to do the work. We've heard of capacity building programs organized in different states of India by the training institutions, and various kinds of courses are being taught. Training is imparted in various fronts: financial management, management of solid waste, etc. But the desired results are not visible on the ground. So whether those programs are being run professionally, why the change that people are wishing to see is not happening is something to be thought about. So allocations for ensuring accountability at the local level and capacity building, whether it's generation of resources or execution of work is concerned. So allocations for these two aspects are equally important if change is to be brought about. With these concluding thoughts, I would like to request IMPRI to take this program towards conclusion. If any panelists or any participant has any information to share, please do so. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for that concluding remark. So with that, as we come to an end of today's discussion, I, Tripta Behra, researcher at IMPRI, Impact and Policy Research Institute, would like to propose the formal vote of thanks on behalf of IMPRI, Center for Habitat, Urban and Regional Studies, CHURS. I would like to thank you all for attending today's deliberation, a panel discussion on cities, local governance, and the Union Budget 2025-26. We are grateful to our chair for the session, Dr. Rumi Aijaz, our esteemed panelists who were here today, Professor Chetan Vaidya, Professor Mahalaya Chatterjee, Professor Tathagat Chatterjee, Mr. Sameer Unhale, and Mr. Tikendra Singh Panwar for taking part in the discussion and enlightening us. We thank all of our participants who have raised pertinent questions and actively participated in today's deliberation. We are grateful if you are watching us later on YouTube or listening to us on our various podcasts or reading our publications. We look forward to welcoming you for day 6 of our budget deliberations tomorrow, that is February 6th at 3 p.m. for Defense, Foreign Policy and the Union Budget 2025-26. followed by the Environment and the Union Budget 2025-26 at 6:30 p.m. You may also find more thematic events and book discussions under IMPRI Web Policy Talk series. We hope you continue to join in future to our IMPRI Web Policy Talk and Web Policy Learning. Wishing you all a very good evening. Thank you. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much, ma'am, for joining.
Thank you.
Thank you to the co-panelists. Thank you to the chair. Thank you, IMPRI.
Thank you. Dhanyavad.
Thank you, everyone. Bye. Good night.
Bye. Good night.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Good night.
Dr. Arjun, can we disconnect, log out?